everybody. Today's service is starting in 1 minute. And today is the last sermon in this series called New Exodus, with a sermon titled The Mark of Success. So please find your seats, turn your phones on silent, and let's get ready to worship our Lord. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's worship experience. My name's Alyssa, and I'm so excited to welcome you guys. Thank you so much for choosing to spend some of your day with us today. If you're joining us for the first time, I encourage you to please fill out one of those Connect cards, which is in the seat pocket in front of you. And if you're joining us online, please comment and let us know that you're with us in community today. We're so excited that you are here. For tithes and offerings this morning, you can send an e-transfer to VPCC@outlook.com, or you can place your tithes and offerings in the boxes located at the front of the stage and at the back of the sanctuary. This coming Saturday, we are headed to the corn maze. So if you would like to join us, we encourage you to please come on out, meet us at the church at 2 p.m. And then we will be headed out to the corn maze for an afternoon of fun. If you want more information, please talk to Tanya Fedora. We have Trunk and Treat coming up here in about a month, and we're looking for volunteers. This is our event that happens every year on Halloween, and we're looking for volunteers who are willing to hand out candy, to decorate their vehicles, to come on out and just have a couple hours of fun in the community. It's going to be awesome. So please make sure you volunteer. You can sign up at the back of the sanctuary. We're also looking for donations of candy or chips or chocolate bars. If you are able to do this, please, you can start bringing in those items now, and you can place them in the Trunk and Treat box, which is out in the front foyer. Thank you so much for helping us out with this event. This event has been huge and growing every single year, and we just look forward to continuing to serve this community in this way. If you want to know more about what's happening in the church, about our events and our small groups, I encourage you to please make sure that you're following us on Facebook. Check out our group, which is titled VPCC Small Groups, as well as you can check your bulletin and check our website, which is VantagePointCC.org. Now, let's get this service started. Bye!
Good morning, everybody. Why don't you guys stand with us? We'll start with some worship. You must think I'm strong to give you what I'm going through. Forgive me if I'm wrong. This looks like more than I can do on my own. I know I'm not strong enough to be everything that I'm supposed to be. I give up, I'm not strong enough. Hands of mercy, won't you cover me, Lord? Right now I'm asking you to be strong enough for the both of us. Well, maybe that's the point. Reach the point of giving up. 'Cause when I finally at rock bottom, it's when I started looking up and reaching out. I know I'm not strong enough to be everything that I'm supposed to be. I give up, I'm not strong enough. Hands of mercy, won't you cover me, Lord? Right now I'm asking you to be strong enough strong enough. 'Cause I'm broken, down to nothing, but I'm still holding on to the one thing. You are God and you are strong and I am weak.
Christ who gives me strength. I don't have to be strong enough.
Strong enough
I can do all things
through Christ.
Christ who gives me strength.
I don't have to be
I don't have to be
strong enough, strong enough. And I know I'm not strong enough to be everything that I'm supposed to be. I give up, I'm not strong enough. Hands of mercy, won't you cover me, Lord? Right now I'm asking you to be strong enough, strong enough, strong enough.
These are the days of Elijah, declaring the word of the Lord. And these are the days of your servant Moses, righteousness being restored. Though these are days of great trial, of famine and darkness and sorrow, still we are the voice in the desert, crying, prepare ye the way of the Lord. Behold, he comes, riding on the clouds, shining like the sun. At the trumpet call, so lift your voice, hear a jubilee. Out of Zion's hill, salvation comes. These are the days of Ezekiel, the dry bones becoming as flesh. These are the days of your servant David, rebuilding a temple of praise. These are the days of the harvest, the fields are wide in the world, and we are the laborers in your vineyard, declaring the word of the Lord. Behold, he comes, riding on the clouds, shining like the sun. At trumpet call, to lift your voice, to hear a jubilee. Down to Zion's hill, salvation comes. Behold, he comes, riding on the clouds, shining like the sun. At trumpet call, so lift your voice, to hear a jubilee. Down to Zion's hill, salvation comes. There's no God like Jehovah. 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 Behold, he comes, riding on the clouds, shining like the sun. At the trumpet call, so lift your voice, It's a year of Jubilee. Out of Zion's hill, salvation comes. Behold, he comes, riding on the clouds, shining like the sun. A trumpet call to lift your voice. It's a year of Jubilee. Out of Zion's hill, salvation comes. So lift your voice. It's a year of Jubilee. And out of Zion's hill, salvation comes.
I was lost without a trace, all except for the eyes of heaven. Now my Savior's love has found me, and His love has brought me home. I can sleep in peace tonight. I won't worry about tomorrow. Now I know my daddy loves me. This perfect love will conquer all. I'm like a child in His eyes. He will meet my needs with all the riches of heaven. And He loves me much too much to let me go. He will keep me in His love. Heaven and earth will pass away, mountains fall into the ocean, but His word is everlasting, and His love goes on and on. I'm like a child in His eyes. He will meet my need with all the riches of heaven. And He loves me much too much to let me go. He will keep me in His love. I'm like a child in His eyes. He'll meet my needs with all the riches of heaven. And He loves me much too much to let me go. He will keep me in His love. All my words fall short. I've got nothing new. How could I express all my gratitude? I could sing these songs as I often do. Every song must end, and you never do. So I throw up my hands, praise you again and again. 'Cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but if nothing else fit for a king, except for a heart singing hallelujah, hallelujah. Got one response, I've got just one move. With my arms stretched wide, I will worship you. So I throw up my hands, praise you again and again. 'Cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, nothing else fit for a king, except for a heart singing hallelujah, hallelujah. So come on, my soul, don't you get shy on me, lift up your song. See, you got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. Come on, my soul, don't you get shy on me, lift up your song. See, you got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. Come on, my soul, don't you get shy on me, lift up your song. You've got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. So I throw up my hands, praise you again and again. So all that I am is a hallelujah, hallelujah. So I know it's not much, but nothing else fit for a king, except for heart singing hallelujah, hallelujah.
So I grew up in a very strange time. I don't know, maybe all kids grew up in this kind of attitude, but we really did think that we were like indestructible. We could do anything.
And I grew up in a time when there was this guy named Robert, but he was never called that, doing strange things with a motorbike. He used to like to jump over buses and cars, and we called him Evil Knievel. And in the time that I grew up, you kind of had the heroes that you wanted to be like, and I had a good friend who wanted to be Evil Knievel. He just looked at this and thought, this is something that I could do. So in 1974, Evil Knievel was going to jump over the Snake River Canyon, 1,600 feet. That wasn't his first choice, by the way. He really wanted to jump over the Grand Canyon, but the United States government wouldn't give him permission. So he was up in a plane looking, he found Snake River Canyon, and he thought, that's what I want. So he leased 300 acres on both sides of Snake River Canyon and started to dream how he was going to jump the canyon on his bike. Well, as he's talking about jumping this canyon on his bike, my buddy starts talking about how he's going to jump the gully at the rec center, It wasn't 1,600 feet across like the Snake River, but it was probably 100 feet across. And on his best day, he wasn't going to get close. But he was talking about how he was going to jump this gully at the rec center. And so we started to, go into training with him. There was this one hill, and as a kid, it seemed like it went straight down the street. And so we'd set up little jumps on the bottom of this street so that we could see how far we could jump it. And we'd all take our bicycles down that thing, and we'd go as fast as we could, and we'd hit that ramp and, jump up and then crash and, get up and brush off our bruises and go and do it again because we were crazy. We thought we could do anything we wanted to do. So we'd go back, we'd try this whole thing again down this steep hill. The major problem, though, was that the steep hill was nowhere near the gully at the rec center. So we weren't going to actually be able to get down this hill and then hit a ramp that would take us over the gully. And even if my friend tried, he'd probably kill himself. So we practiced, we dreamed, he was going to do all this stuff. None of the rest of us really thought he could do it, and he didn't do it. But then again, Evil Knievel didn't jump across Snake River Canyon either. Although what he was jumping across in didn't look much like a bike. To me, that looks more like a rocket of some sort, but that was his super cycle, X2 cycle, that he was going to jump the Snake River Canyon on, 1,600 feet. He believed, what he told the reporters was that by the time that bike got to the end of its ramp, it would be going 200 miles an hour. For those of you who don't know what miles are, that's fast. And he believed that he'd hit a max speed of 350 miles per hour during the jump. And this was all kind of what he needed to get 1,600 feet across to the other side of the canyon. Unfortunately for Evil Knievel, he went through the initial stages of that jump, probably reached the 200 miles an hour that he needed at the end of the ramp, but then his parachute went off. So it kind of wrecked getting any other speed because he had a parachute now dragging him, and he went down to the bottom of the canyon, and luckily, I think all he did was break his nose or something, so nothing major, although he had broken bones upon bones. And this was probably supposed to be his last hurrah of what he was going to do, and he kind of failed. But that was okay, because, he lived a life. We saw him with, cars, Rolls Royces, Jaguars. He had money. He had everything. And he seemed to be like the picture of success, especially to kids like us who wanted what he had. And that story just kind of got me thinking about what is success for us. What is the definition of success for you? If you are to label your life a failure or a success, which are you? Are you a failure? Or are you a success? My fear is that too many of us think we're failures. Too many of us have got this idea of success in our mind, and it doesn't quite measure up with our reality, therefore we are failures. But I don't think that's a God definition that's been given to us. And I think sometimes our idea of success needs to be just twisted a little bit. So we're going to talk. We're ending our series on the new Exodus. We're going to pick up the story in Nehemiah 13, verse 1. It says, Nehemiah says, on that day the book of Moses was read aloud in the hearing of the people. And there it was found written that no Ammonite or Moabite should ever be admitted into the assembly of God, because they had not met the Israelites with food and water, but had hired Balaam to call a curse down on them. Our God, however, turned that curse into a blessing. And when the people heard the law, they excluded from Israel all who were of foreign descent. Before this, Eliashib, the priest, had been in charge of the storerooms of the house of our God. And he was closely associated with Tobiah. And he had provided him with a large room formerly used to store the grain offerings and the incense and the temple articles, and also the tithes of grain, the new wine, and the olive oil prescribed for the Levites, musicians, gatekeepers, as well as contribution for the priests. So if you're trying to keep in that blank, that first one is infiltration. Need to know something about Tobiah. Tobiah was an enemy of Israel. He had tried everything to try to stop Israel from what they were doing. He had threatened them. He had commanded them. He had tricked them. He even hired a prophet to preach against them. But none of it had worked, because Nehemiah stood against Tobiah. But the time came when Nehemiah was called back to the temple. And that was when Tobiah decided that he would change his tactic and try to infiltrate Israel. And so a while back, Nelda and I were watching a movie, and I tried to find it, and I couldn't find it. It was basically based on Noor Inayat Khan's life. She was a communications officer in Britain during the Second World War. And during the Second World War, they needed to get somebody, well, actually 1943, they needed to get somebody into France that could get messages out about what was happening in France. And they didn't have anybody. Noor was working in the office, and some people suggested that maybe she's the one that they could send in, but her immediate supervisors did not think she was a good fit. She was, according to some, not smart enough. She was volatile, got mad very easily. Just not what you want for somebody who's going in and has to blend in with the environment. So they kept on looking for somebody else, but the problem is they had nobody. And so they started to train Noor for this job of getting into France, connecting with the resistance cell, and getting messages out of France back to Britain. They trained her, and her training ended in June 1943. And as soon as it ended, June 16th, 1943, they airlifted Noor into France. She was immediately connected with her cell and began working in France. The problem from Britain's side was that as soon as she was airlifted in, they realized that the cell that she was connected with was starting to be arrested one by one by the Germans. Now they had an untried operative in France with her team, her contacts, being arrested one by one. And so immediately Britain tried to call her back home. They just said, come on back home, we got to get you out. This is how we're going to do it. And she said, no, I won't go home because there's nobody else here to do my job. So I'm going to stay here and do the job as long as I can. And she actually proved to be not a bad operative. She kept on, even after she had lost her contacts, she kept on being able to send messages out of France and back to Britain, until she was betrayed in October of 1943, and she was arrested. But she had been successful for at least that period of time. She had been successful at infiltrating a country and being able to get messages back out to the people who needed those messages to decide what to do next. After her arrest, she was kept in a prison for a while, and then she was actually she was taken off to Dachau. Anyways, concentration camp. And there, on September 13th, 1944, she was executed, along with 3 other spies. For a while, she did it. So Tobiah, after Nehemiah left, decided, listen, I will change my tactic. I will do something different. What I've been doing hasn't been working. Let's see if I can wiggle my way into Israel. Nehemiah, before he left, had prayed a prayer. He said, remember Tobiah and Sanballat, my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophet Noadiah and how she and the rest of the prophets have been trying to intimidate me. So he prays this prayer, and then he basically leaves. And the first thing Tobiah does is he tries to get back into Israel to work against the desires of the exiles who were coming home. Continue on, and while all this was going on, I was not in Jerusalem. I is Nehemiah. For in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, had returned to the king. I had returned to the king. Sometime later, I asked his permission and came back to Jerusalem. Here I learned about the evil thing that Eliashib had done in providing Tobiah a room in the courts of the house of God. I was greatly displeased and threw all Tobiah's household goods out of the room. I gave orders to purify the rooms, and then I put back into them the equipment of the house of God and the grain offerings and the incense. The next blank is the nature of sin. Sin is a willful transgression of God's will. At least that's what Sunday school always told us, right? But sometimes that oversimplifies it just a little bit too much. Sin is not just me deciding to do something that is against God. I'm not sure. I'm trying to get into Eliashib's head. And he was the high priest. We also know he was likely very wealthy. And so after Nehemiah leaves, Tobiah comes to him, and he's trying to get back into the Israel government of some sort so that he can sabotage them from the inside. And Eliashib decides that he will lease him this room in the temple. Now, I'm not sure how big a deal that was back in Nehemiah's day, but I know how big a deal that was during Jesus' day. Paul, the apostle, was arrested, and the people wanted him killed for the crime of bringing Titus, who was a Gentile, into the court of women or the court of Israel. Not into a room of the temple, just into the court. If you remember, the temple was set up with this. The court of Gentiles was around the outside, and there anybody could go. Doesn't matter who you were, you could go into the court of Gentiles. This is where Jesus did a lot of his teaching, was in the court of Gentiles. Inside of that was the court of women, where you probably understood women can go, and men actually, because as long as you were from Israel, this was now the beginning of, you had to be you had to be Jewish to go into the court of women. And then inside of that was the court of Israel, which was where circumcised men could go and worship. And then inside of that was the temple proper, where the priests and the Levites could go. So Paul, at the end of Acts, is accused of trying to bring Titus, a Christian pastor, Gentile Christian pastor, into places in the temple where he was not allowed to go. And for that crime, they wanted to kill Paul. So here we have in the story of Nehemiah, we have Eliashib renting a room of the temple to a pagan who was trying to destroy Israel. And it's like you have to give your head, how does that even happen? How do you allow somebody like that to rent a room in the temple? And all I can come up with is a couple things. I don't think necessarily Eliashib was willfully going against the will of God. I do think two other things, though. Number one, he was wealthy and money was important, and he saw the ability to make a buck. And number two, he wasn't paying attention. Eliashib's sin became because he had put other things in the important slot of God, and so he was following different morals, and he simply was not paying attention when Nehemiah was there. He simply didn't quite get what was going on. And so he let this infiltrator rent a room inside the temple. And nobody could figure out, Nehemiah couldn't figure out what in the world had happened. And so when he came back, he was displeased, according to Nehemiah, and he chucked everything of Tobias out of the room. He purified it, and then he put it back to its original use. We tell a story sometimes during the Easter season of Jesus coming to the temple. And he gets to the temple and he finds people that are at the temple who are selling things. They're selling doves and sacrificial lambs. They're actually trading money. You bring in your money, they will give you the temple money because the temple tax had to be paid with temple money. And you've been around me, you might remember I basically said, this is the real crime. It's not that they were selling things in the church. My grandfather was a song evangelist, and he would often ask for permission to sell records. Back then it was records, not CDs, because I'm old. And he'd sell them back at the back end of the church. And people would come and buy cassette tapes or records, whatever they wanted, at the back of the church. That's not the sin that was happening in the temple. The sin at the temple was they were taking simple things that were needed for worship, marking them up so that they were expensive, and selling them to people, especially to poor people. So in other words, they would come, you needed to have a dove was the cheapest thing for sacrifice. You needed a dove. Well, here, I've got a dove for you, and it's already been pre-approved, and I'm going to give it to you for 5 times what it's worth. Just pay me the money. You need to have temple currency to pay your temple tax. You can get your temple currency right here. We'll sell it to you for 10 times what it's worth, but then you can pay your temple tax. They were taking advantage of the people. And Jesus walks in and he sees all of this happening. And all of these happening so that the poor can't worship. And he gets a little mad. It says, "It is written," he said to them, "My house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." Then it says, "The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them." Basically, what Jesus did was he took what was there, what was happening. He kicked out the people who were trying to make all his money off of the poorer people of the town who had come for the celebration. He cleansed it, and then he put it back to its original use. He started to heal people in the temple courts. He allowed people to worship what you were supposed to be able to do inside of the temple. Nehemiah did the exact same thing back in his day as he kicks Tobiah out and he begins to clear out all of his stuff and he cleanses it and then he puts back in what is supposed to be in these rooms. But you have to wonder as Nehemiah comes back, as he looks at everything that's going on, if he somehow had this feeling of regret. We worked so hard. We came and we worked and we gathered, we taught. Ezra taught from the Bible. We read the law to them. We did all of these things. And yet, the people, I go away for a little while, and the people are right back where they started from. These people are no better than the stubborn people who came out of Egypt. This is a failure. What else could it be? I haven't been gone that long, and they're already doing the things that they used to do, which they stopped doing because it was sin. Something else became a priority for them, and so they sinned. They weren't paying attention, and so they sinned. This is a failure. It couldn't be anything else. But the end of Nehemiah 13, he prays a prayer. Listen to this prayer. Remember me with favor, oh my God. That's it. Remember me with favor, my God. The next blank is just simply prayer of success. Remember me with favor. I am not a success because of what I can do. I'm not a success because of what I have, what I possess. I'm not a success because of anything that is in my life. I'm a success because God has made me that. He has extended his mercy to me. And that's all that I need. I'm forgiven, and that is enough. During Jesus' ministry, he took Peter, James, and John up on the side of a mountain. And the disciples got to witness something. Two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in the glorious splendor talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure. That word departure is exodus. They spoke about his exodus, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Jesus would later pray, I have to go so that you can receive what you need to be a success. I have to go so that the Spirit of God can come down on you. So that you can receive that Spirit, that you can receive God's forgiveness, that you can start to be remade into the image of Christ. But unless I go, that can't happen. Unless my exodus happens, I can't make you a success. The disciples were still a mess after Jesus left. But they were forgiven. They understood the mercy and grace of God. They understood what they needed was not more of them, but more of him. We used to sing an old chorus, more of you, just more of you. I've got all but what I need. Just more of you. That's success. Success is saying, remember me, oh God. I'm your child. I'm in need of your mercy. I'm in need of your forgiveness. I'm in need of you. Start off talking about Evel Knievel. It wasn't just a trip back down through memory lane and some friends that I used to have that were crazy when I was a kid. Evel Knievel seemed to have everything that he needed to become what he was. A hero, a success. He had money. He had everything that he needed. And yet listen to what Evel said in 2007. He said this, I know that there's more to life than what I've had. I wrote a book called Evil Ways. I said, I've had a life better than any king, any president, or any prince. Hogwash. I didn't have Jesus Christ in my life. I was talking about the Rolls Royces. I had 5 of them. The Ferraris. I've had 5 of them. The Stetsons. The Lamborghinis. The jet airplanes, 2 of them. I flew one alongside the other so that I could read my name on the side. I want to tell you something. I've been a sinner. You're looking at a real sinner, but not anymore. You're not looking at a sinner anymore. I've received forgiveness. I've received grace. I am different now. And it's the cry of all of us. We have been given forgiveness and grace, and that has made us success. We were talking in the Sunday school class this morning that, there's a psalm I was reading this week which basically said, trust in the Lord and do what is good. Well, the two are linked. I can't do what is good unless I trust in the Lord, because doing what is good is hard. I need the grace and the forgiveness and the Spirit of God in me if I'm going to trust in the Lord and do what is good. That will make me more of a success than anything I could accomplish on this earth. It's not in what you've got. It's in Jesus in you, His grace and His forgiveness. On October 8th, 1871, there was a pastor in Chicago who was preaching in the evening service. Back, there was a time when we had evening services, not just morning services. I grew up in a family that went to church twice on Sundays and twice during the week, Wednesday and Friday. Friday was more of a fun night. Wednesday was Bible study. So he was preaching in the evening service on a Sunday, October 8th, 1871. And he started to hear the bells ringing, indicating that there was a fire somewhere in the city. And he could tell his people were getting a little bit antsy. And so he decided to end the service early. He said, we'll cut her off here. Go home. Consider where you are in your walk with God and come back next week. And then he dismissed them, and they left through the doors of the church and went to their homes. What he didn't know was that a lot of them would not come back the next week. They would die in the great Chicago fire that killed so many of the city. And this caused anguish for him. He wondered if any of them died without God. If any of them died needing to have grace and forgiveness poured over their lives. If they died thinking that they were a failure rather than understanding that God's mercy is with them and that they were blessed. It just caused him pain and anguish as he thought of the people that he would never see again after that night. And I have told that story before, but I never thought I would live through it. But I did. March 2020, we were here for church. We gathered together. There was a thing that was starting to go around, a virus. We didn't know what was going to happen or take place. But I think it was Monday morning, or maybe even been Sunday after we left, we found out that church was canceled. We couldn't meet anymore. I think we could have under 15 people, which basically was our worship team and our tech team. So we started going through plans right there and then about how we would do church the next week by gathering together. And so we got, basically our team together and said, we're going to show up for church, same as normal. We're going to put it on Facebook. Back then we were doing it with a little phone. Now we got cameras, we got a little bit more equipment, but back then it was just simply a phone that we sat right about here. And we tried to do the service as if you were in the seats. We even had, at one point, considered putting your pictures where you usually sit. But we didn't have all your pictures, and so we weren't sure that that would work. But you weren't here. And we missed you. I can remember that first Sunday, I got a phone call. In the middle of my sermon, you may not have noticed it, but I did. Somebody phoned me, and it was a neighbor who saw all the cars at the church and wondered if we were violating the command to not gather. And I can remember phoning the person back. I don't know who they were, never did get to talk to them, but I said, no, we're not violating anything. We're staying 6 feet apart. We're doing all the things that we're supposed to do. And there's only, there's about 12 of us here that day. We're under the 15. We're doing a live service for those who can't come. But it was one of the hardest parts of my ministry. In fact, I can remember, it's going to seem kind of silly, but I can remember the way that I would talk to myself during that time was I just kept on telling myself, it's okay, I'm going to retire soon anyways. It's okay, I'm going to retire soon anyways. It's okay. We can get through this. But you were not here. For a long time, you were not here. Oh, we saw your names. I would pray through your names as we read through the Facebook responses. That's why we like it when you chip in and say, hi, this is so-and-so here. But you weren't here. And I didn't know in that last Sunday, before we got shut down because of COVID, I did not realize that there were some people that were here that I would never, ever get to see again. And so I made a decision. When all this is over, when this is finally done, we're going to do a service. And we're just simply going to remember the people that we didn't get to see again because of COVID. The people that passed away while we were separated. So we actually planned this service for a year ago, September. And just before the service was supposed to take place, they shut us down again because COVID was picking up. And so we postponed it today. Yeah, talk faster so they don't shut us down again. Here are some of the people. By the way, I want to tell you that none of these people died of COVID, although there are a couple that I think may have been complicated by the pandemic and everything being shut down. But here's my list. You've probably got your own list of people that we've lost that you remember that you'll never see again. But here's my list. Tammy Walker. I miss Tammy. Smiley. Been praying for her family a lot lately because Travis just passed away this summer as well, her son. But Tammy was the first to go during that time of COVID. Jackie Shower. Jackie coming in here with her smile. Her acting with us. She played Ghost of Christmas Future, I think it was, in Past. Ghost of Christmas Past, and the Scrooge that we did a number of years ago. We lost Jackie. Ollie Clarkson. Wonderful lady. Again, Smiley, sat with the ladies right back here. I can still remember them. Every Sunday I'd look for them. They would be right there. And right beside Harley would always be Sheila, smiling, making sure everybody knew that everything was all right. Sitting right just over here. Linda McClinton. She used to tell me that she needed her wheelchair up here. Jerry's fine to be at the back, but she wanted to be at the front. She said, I need to be close so that I can concentrate on what you're saying. And Linda came on DATS. Linda came from South Edmonton on DATS. And she would be told by people all the time that, there are churches that are closer to you than this one. And she'd say, yes, but that's the one I want to go to. And so she would come from South Edmonton on DATS. She'd sit here at the front on that corner. And then I'd stay with her because her DATS didn't come pick her up till about 2 o'clock. And so we'd sit together and she'd watch me work, or sometimes we'd talk, do something. Erwin Epp, my theologian, loved to talk to him, especially if you wanted to talk about the second coming of Christ. He was the guy to go to. He was always reading the books, always willing to talk. I included this one, although she's passed away a little bit more recently. But she's our elder statesman, Anne Krafko, 105 years old when she passed away. But again, I haven't seen her since before the pandemic. We lost touch somehow. And it hurts. Even today, just reading the names and remembering brings back a little bit of pain. But you know what? I know where they are. Not because they led perfect lives, but because I know that they cried out for God's mercy and God's forgiveness over them all the days of their life. So they were successful. This morning we're going to close the service. And I want to do something a little bit differently. We're not going to talk about the offering when we normally do. We're just going to sing a couple songs straight through. But what I want us to do, not command, you do not have to do this. But if you would like to, love for you to just come up. There is a couple of candles here like this. And just light a candle. Try to light one that's not at the very front so that somebody behind you doesn't burn up when they're coming. Light one candle for all of them. And all the ones that you remember, that you miss, that we've lost in the last few years. Light the candle and pray that prayer that Jeremiah prayed. Remember me with favor, my God. Because that is how we will be a success. Not because we do great things, but because we are a people who are willing to depend on God. I'm going to ask the worship team to come first so we can start singing, and we're just going to sing. So this is it. We're going to sing a couple songs, do our benediction, and we'll be done. So after the worship team, if you would like to come and light a candle in memory of those we have lost, in memory of those that you know that we've lost. And then we will sing.
One day you'll make everything new. Jesus, one day you will bind every wound. Former things shall all pass away. No more tears. One day you'll make sense of it all. Jesus, one day every question resolved. Every anxious thought left behind. No more fear. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. One day we will see face to face Jesus. There a greater vision of grace. In a moment we shall be changed on that day. One day we'll be free, free indeed. Jesus, one day all this struggle will cease. We will see your glory revealed on that day. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Yes, one day we will see face to face Jesus. Is there a greater vision of grace? And in a moment we shall be changed. In a moment we shall be changed. In a moment we shall be changed on that day. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Yes, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. We'll sing and shout the victory.
Come, my child, there is a place they say you belong. You will hear the sweetest sound. This is a place where we pray. This is a place where we cry. This is a place where we start till death do us part, where we say goodbye. Here we leave all our pain, find forgiveness and grace. Here we walk down the aisle, dedicate every child here in this sacred place. Break some bread, come share the wine. At this table there is a place. Bring your fear, take his peace. Come and share this holy space. This is a place where we pray. This is a place where we cry. This is a place where we start till death do us part, where we say goodbye. Here we leave all our pain, find forgiveness and grace. Here we walk down the aisle, dedicate every child here in this sacred place.
Oh God, as we come together in this sacred place, shape us, help us. God, may we come to you. May we ask for your Spirit, that it would be poured out on us, that we would find the mercy and the forgiveness that you have for each one of us. God, don't let one of us leave this place until we have made sure that that is the truth in our lives. God of all consolation and compassion, your Son comforted the grieving sisters, Martha and Mary. Your breath alone brings life to dry bones and weary souls. Pour out your Spirit upon us, that we may face despair and death with the hope of resurrection and the faith of the one who called Lazarus forth from the grave. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you for sharing part of your Sunday morning with us. We hope that you will come back again and be with us next week, right here at VantagePoint and on Facebook. Grace and peace be with you all through this week.
Holy, 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 God Almighty, Emmanuel. This is a place where we pray. This is a place where we cry. This is a place where we start till death do us part, where we say goodbye. Here we leave all our pain, find forgiveness and grace. Here we walk down the aisle, dedicate every child here in this sacred place.
Holy